A young mother locks up her salon for the night. She waves at a familiar face through the window, cleaning up, closing out the register just like any other Thursday. 20 minutes later, that same woman spots a stranger jumping out through that same window and running. By the time police arrive, the lights are off, the front door is locked from the inside, and the woman who waved goodbye through that window is dead. For 10 years, her killer's fingerprint sat in a police file with no name attached to it. Neighbors were questioned. A vehicle was searched for. An entire small town lived with the unsettling thought that they might be standing next to a killer at church, at the grocery store, anywhere. And then completely by accident, a conversation at an auto shop over a routine oil change cracked the case wide open. This is the story of Dana's murder, the decade of silence that almost let her killer get away with it, and the one person who finally couldn't stay quiet anymore. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Dana was born in November of 1967 in Spartanburg, South Carolina, into a close, faith-centered family. Everyone who knew her seemed to describe her the same way. Warm, generous, the kind of person who made friends without even trying. If someone needed help, Dana didn't wait to be asked twice. She was drawn to the beauty industry early on, and after high school she trained as a hairstylist. It didn't take long for her to realize this wasn't just a job. It was the career she wanted to build her life around. She settled in a small town just outside her hometown, married a man named Mike not long after graduating, and together they had 2 children, a daughter and a son. For years, Dana quietly saved money with one goal in mind, opening a salon of her own. Eventually, she made it happen. By the summer of 1995, Dana was 27 years old, running her own business and doing her best to balance long hours at the salon with raising 2 young kids. Like a lot of small business owners, the shop took nearly everything she had to give. She had no idea that summer would be her last. On the evening of July 31st, a woman named Diane Harris, a local who sold cleaning supplies door-to-door around town, stopped by Dana's salon around 6:30 to make a delivery. Nothing seemed unusual, just another routine stop on her route. About 2 hours later, Diane passed by the salon again while waiting for a ride. The lights were still on. Through the window, she could see Dana inside, tidying up, getting ready to close for the night. Dana even looked up and waved at her. It was an ordinary moment, the kind you'd forget by the next morning. Except 20 minutes later, everything changed. Diane was still outside when she noticed the salon lights were now off. Then came strange sounds from inside, dull, heavy thuds, then a crash. And then a man came through the window, not the door, and ran. Diane didn't have a cell phone, so she ran to a nearby store to call 911. And in an almost unbelievable twist, the same man she'd just seen jumping from the window walked into that same store right behind her. He looked at her. She looked at him. Then he turned and left. An officer happened to be nearby and responded almost immediately, expecting nothing more than a break-in call. He walked the salon with his flashlight, room by room, until he reached the back. That's where he found Dana. Her clothing had been partially removed. Her body was covered in bruises and scrapes, and a purse strap had been looped around her neck, tied to a water heater, holding her slightly off the ground. Within minutes, this had gone from a possible burglary to a homicide investigation, and in a town that small, officers recognized her immediately. Detectives moved fast. Nothing had been stolen. The register was untouched. Valuables were still sitting in plain sight, so robbery was ruled out almost immediately. This wasn't about money. It was personal. Based on Diane's description, police put together a composite sketch. A young white man, around 5'9", wearing a gray t-shirt and jeans. But even in a town where Diane knew nearly everyone from her sales route, she didn't recognize his face at all. Investigators caught a break almost right away. A single fingerprint on the water heater the strap had been tied to. Whoever killed Dana had almost certainly touched that surface to secure the knot. When they ran it, the print matched her husband, Mike. For a moment, it looked like the case might already be solved, but it unraveled just as fast. Mike and Dana had recently separated, though they hadn't filed for divorce, and by every account from friends and family, they were still on good terms and quietly trying to work things out for their kids' sake. Mike told police he'd been home with the children that night, and both of them, ages 8 and 6, backed him up. He didn't match the composite sketch either. He was a much bigger man than the one Diane described, and investigators doubted he could have fit through that window. He passed a polygraph with no signs of deception, and he explained the fingerprint easily. He'd installed that water heater himself and had done odd repairs around the salon for years. Mike was cleared. Then came a second print, this one left in blood at the scene. DNA testing confirmed the blood was Dana's, which meant this print almost certainly belonged to her killer. But when investigators ran it against every person in her life, nothing matched. It wasn't in any existing database either. The autopsy results, when they came back, confirmed just how violent the attack had been. Dana had been strangled and beaten, and evidence showed she'd been sexually assaulted. Investigators recovered biological evidence from her attacker, but in 1995, the national DNA database law enforcement relies on today wasn't yet operational. There was no way to run the sample and simply wait for a match. The only option was to collect DNA from potential suspects one at a time and compare it by hand. They tried. Dozens of comparisons, dozens of dead ends. Then a new witness came forward, a man named Ken, who said that around 8:40 that night after the attack, he'd driven past the salon and noticed the lights were off, but Dana's car was still parked outside. Nearby, at a neighboring business that was already closed for the night, he saw a stranger standing next to a white and blue Ford Bronco, watching him with a tense, unsettled expression until he drove away. It wasn't much, but it was something, a possible vehicle at least. Police began cross-referencing Bronco owners in the area. A few names looked suspicious enough to investigate further, but none of it led to an arrest. Months passed, then longer. The town lived under a strange kind of tension, people reporting every white and blue Bronco they spotted, Dana's own children flagging the vehicle to their father whenever they saw one. But every tip fizzled out. There was one more moment of hope. An inmate called police claiming his cellmate, a man named Russell Quinn, had bragged about knowing Dana, kept a photo of her, and had once admitted to killing her. Russell had a prior conviction for a disturbingly similar assault. He'd tied a previous victim to a tree, and he drove a similar vehicle and resembled the composite sketch closely enough that Diane picked him out of a photo lineup, without hesitation. Investigators were confident they finally had their man. Then the DNA came back. It wasn't a match. Just like that, their strongest lead in months evaporated. After that, the case went cold, truly cold. Years passed. Dana's children grew up without her, and with each passing year, even they stopped expecting an answer. 10 years went by. Dana's daughter, Ashley, was now 18 and in college. One afternoon, she pulled into an auto shop for a routine oil change. Nothing more memorable than any other errand. While she waited, one of the mechanics quietly mentioned to a coworker that she looked strikingly like a woman who'd been murdered in town a decade earlier. A woman named Dana. His coworker told him the truth. Ashley wasn't just someone who looked like Dana. She was her daughter. The mechanic, we'll call him Michael, since that's the name he eventually gave police, hadn't even known Dana had children. But learning it changed something in him, because for 10 years, Michael had been carrying a secret. Back when he was 17, Michael Pace had called police anonymously and given them a name. A friend of his, also 17 at the time, named Jonathan Vick. He told them Jonathan's mother owned a white and blue Ford Bronco, and that Jonathan had been driving it the night of the murder. Investigators looked into it, but Jonathan's mother refused to let them speak with her son or examine the vehicle, and a judge wouldn't issue a warrant based on a single anonymous tip. The lead went nowhere, and it was buried along with everything else. Now, 10 years later, seeing Dana's daughter in person forced Michael to reckon with what he'd been sitting on. He called police again. This time, they told him plainly, if he wanted this to matter, he couldn't stay anonymous anymore. So he gave them his name. Michael told detectives the full story. The night of the murder, Jonathan had given him a ride home in his mother's Bronco. Out of nowhere, Jonathan mentioned he was planning to get his hair done that night. Strange, given the hour. When Michael pointed that out, Jonathan clarified, he wasn't going for the haircut, he was going to see Dana. Both of their families used her salon regularly, so Jonathan knew her well, and that night, he wouldn't stop talking about how attractive she was and what he wanted to do with her. Michael assumed he was joking. Jonathan was 10 years younger than Dana, but when Michael laughed it off, Jonathan snapped back, almost daring him. You don't think I can do it? The next day, when news broke that Dana had been murdered, Michael refused to believe it had anything to do with his friend. But once police started publicly searching for a white Ford Bronco, doubt crept in, and when he and Jonathan crossed paths again, Jonathan told him flatly that he'd kill him if he ever told anyone about that conversation. That threat is why Michael stayed silent for 10 years. It took seeing Dana's grown daughter and thinking about what she and her brother had lost for him to finally decide the risk was worth it. With Michael's statement on record, a judge finally signed off on a warrant. By this point, Jonathan was married with a daughter of his own, living about 30 minutes away, and had served 2 years in the Marine Corps. He didn't have a serious criminal history, 2 prior arrests for vandalism and domestic violence. Both dropped, but he'd struggled to hold down steady work, repeatedly clashing with coworkers and supervisors. Police collected his DNA. It matched the biological evidence recovered from Dana's body. Jonathan denied everything. He claimed he'd never even known Dana. But between the DNA and Michael's testimony, the case against him was no longer circumstantial. It was airtight. When he was arrested and led past reporters, he said only, "I love my wife and my daughter. That's all that matters," and continued denying involvement throughout questioning. Investigators pieced together what they believed had happened that night. Jonathan went to the salon, likely using a haircut as his cover story, and made an unwanted advance toward Dana. She may have brushed it off as a joke or turned him down outright. Either way, something in that moment triggered him. He locked the door, cut the lights, and attacked her. Once she lost consciousness, he dragged her to the small bathroom at the back of the salon, assaulted her, and strangled her with the purse strap. One detail never fully made sense to investigators: why he left through the window instead of simply unlocking the door and walking out unnoticed. If he just walked out normally, there's a real chance no one would have looked twice. Instead, that one decision was exactly what caught Diane's attention and set the entire chain of events in motion that would, eventually, catch him. While prosecutors built their case, they uncovered something else. A cellmate came forward and said Jonathan had confided that if he could relive any day of his life, it would be the day he went to Dana's salon. He'd also admitted parking his car near a different business on purpose, specifically so it wouldn't be seen near the salon, and that he'd gone out the window because he panicked. The trial began in November of 2006, prosecuted by Spartanburg County's Trey Gowdy, who would later go on to serve in the U.S. Congress. Jonathan maintained his innocence to the end. It didn't matter. The jury took less than 20 minutes to return a unanimous guilty verdict on all counts: murder, kidnapping, and criminal sexual conduct, and he was sentenced to life in prison. When the sentence was read, he broke down and insisted the real killer was still free. He's eligible for parole starting in 2035, though an assault on a correctional officer while incarcerated, which added 3 more years to his sentence, will likely weigh heavily against him. Here's the part of this story that still keeps investigators up at night. 7 years after Dana's murder, while Jonathan was still walking free, he got engaged to a 20-year-old woman named Heather Sellers, who worked at a Waffle House in Spartanburg. On the night of the 24th of September, 2002, Heather went out with Jonathan. She was never seen again. Friends said she described the relationship as volatile, and that Jonathan had a temper that could flare without warning. Her car was later found at the bottom of a river. Heather herself was never found. Jonathan was the primary suspect. Police were never able to prove it. After his arrest for Dana's murder, investigators located an abandoned vehicle registered in Jonathan's name.
Inside, they found hair and what appeared to be bloodstains, but not enough material to run a conclusive DNA test. No charges have ever been filed in Heather's disappearance, but investigators believe the connection is far too specific to ignore. If they're right, Dana may not have been the only life Jonathan took. 10 years of silence, a single fingerprint, a stranger's chance resemblance to her mother at an auto shop. It's almost hard to believe that's what finally brought Dana's killer to justice, but it's exactly what happened. If this story stayed with you, let us know your thoughts in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss the next case we cover.